Hello and welcome to the first of several CloudSystem 9 demos. First thing we're going to do in this demo is take a look at the Helion CloudSystem Operations Console. Would have been known as the Admin Console in CloudSystem 8. Let's change its name to the Operations Console or Ops Console in CloudSystem 9. So I've just logged in and I can see the dashboard is in front of us now, and we can see that we've got some compute nodes, we've got some appliances, and we've got some services up and running. So that's a good overview really of the entire cloud system solution and how it's operating. So let's just go to the main menu and look at the compute summary. And we can see that we've got a total of 2 compute nodes. One of them's up and one of them is unknown. So let's click on the unknown. And it tells me this is the management cluster, which in truth is not really a compute node. It's the node on which the management services run. It's not going to be used for our VM creation. That's what the CS target cluster is for. And as we can see, the CS target cluster is up, it's activated, and clicking on its name shows us the resource utilization. We don't have any VMs running at the moment. We don't have much running at the moment, so we've got plenty of spare resource there. So back to the main menu. And let's take a look at system summary. And we can see that we've got 13 appliances installed. We've got some public networks. We've got some other resources available here. So I'm just going to click on View Appliances. And we can see all of the appliances that comprise our cloud system solution. So we've got 1 update appliance, 3 monitoring appliances, 3 management appliances, 3 enterprise appliances, and 3 cloud controllers down here at the bottom. So everything looks reasonably healthy. What we're going to do next is to have a look at the monitoring dashboard. So back to the main menu. In the general section, I've got the monitoring dashboard. I'm clicking now, and then launch monitoring dashboard. It's going to have me log in. That's the first time. And this shows me an instant overview of the health of the system. Well, I can see that we've got some issues with the monitoring service. So let me just click on one of the monitoring servers down here and click on status. And it shows me I've got a low priority NTP time sync issue. In real life, I would investigate and deal with that, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment. Now let's go take a look at the activity dashboard. So I'm going back to the main menu in my Ops console and click Activity Dashboard and then launch Activity Dashboard. Have to log in again. So here we are at the activity dashboard, and it's showing us all of the activities that are happening in the cloud system appliances. There's a lot of stuff here, but we do have quite advanced search capability. So let me just, as an example, search for Nova-compute, and I want to do a logical and see the activities that have been happening on controller number 2, press enter, and it's brought up 4 of these activities for me. And when I click on each of these activities, it shows me detail, and I can scroll down, and very useful for troubleshooting if if anything goes wrong. In the unlikely event that anything goes wrong with CloudSystem, all of the activities are stored here. In the unlikely event that anything does go wrong with the CloudSystem, then we can come here and look at all of the events and use this for troubleshooting. I'm just going to clear that search term. And I'm going now to click on status, and that's going to order the activities into priority, starting off with OK. Really, I'm not that interested in OK, so I'm clicking status again, and that is going to reorder and show me those critical activities. These are, generally speaking, the things that I would want to pay attention to when I'm troubleshooting. Again, I can click any of these activities and go look at the detail, and I probably would have to get the manual out to find out what all of this stuff means, but there's a good deal of information in there that can help if we need to troubleshoot. Now let's go and take a look at the appliances. A new feature in CloudSystem 9 is appliance clustering. So each major component runs as 3 virtual appliances clustered in an active configuration. This clustering includes anti-affinity rules to ensure that the clustered appliances run on separate hypervisor hosts in the cluster wherever possible. So we're going to go back to the Ops console and then appliances. Now we took a look at this briefly before, but we may not have noticed that the appliances were indeed clustered in trios, in 3s. So as we just said, most of these appliances are clustered. The only one that's not in a trio, a cluster of 3, is the update appliance. Now, that really is not considered to be business critical. If the update appliance goes down, the CloudSystem continues to run. It just means it won't be able to be updated. So let's take a look at our first management appliance. And it shows us how many CPU cores it's got, how much memory it's got. It shows us its IP addresses, etc. Likewise, let's look at our first monitoring system. It shows us it's got 4 CPU cores, 8 gigabytes of memory, etc. So now let's take a look at block storage devices. A cloud administrator can add different drivers into CloudSystem Foundation for storage, for block storage. Choices include the VMware Virtual Machine File System, or VMFS driver. That's for VM instances running on ESX compute. We also have got HPE Store Virtual VSA for VM instances running on KVM and Hyper-V. So we're going to take a look at VMFS in this next demo. From the main menu of the Ops console, we will click Block Storage Devices. And here is the CloudSystem VMware VMFS block storage. And we can see here clearly we have the domain name, and we have the transport type VMFS, and store server backend count of 1. So, as we've seen, the Ops console is used to manage the cloud system, the underlying infrastructure, if you will, for the cloud system. Next, we're going to take a look at the Horizon portal. And I've already logged into the Horizon portal, and we're going to create some networks. So I'm logged in as an administrator, as you can see, admin, and I get the project and the admin sections. So I want to create an external network, and this external network is going to allow VMs that we create later on to talk to the external network. So I simply click admin. I'm already on the admin section, and networks. I have no networks at the moment. I will click create network, and its name is external, and the project that I'm going to attach it to is service. Provider network type is flat. Physical network is external. Admin state up is I don't need it to be shared, and external network needs to be checked. And click create network. And there it is, the network has been created. So this is a network that all tenants are going to be able to use to get their VMs talking to the external network, and for the external network to be able to talk to the VMs. Now let's go to project, network topology, and we should be able to see that external network we just created, and there it is, the name external. Now we want to give our tenants the ability to create their own networks later on, and in order to do that we've got to create some segmentation IDs. So tenant networks are part of the cloud data trunk, and they're created from a pool of VLANs, and we're going to configure that in the operations console shortly. So the OpenStack networking service assigns VLANs from this pool that we're going to create shortly to tenant networks when they're created by users in the Horizon portal. So users create the tenant networks and associate them with their VM instances that they create. They can then assign tenant networks to VM instances during VM provisioning. Now users create individual tenant networks using VLANs identified for that purpose. So what we're going to see now is we're going to create a segmentation ID range, a VLAN ID range effectively, that we're going to use in a later demo when we create some tenant networks. So from the Ops console, back to the Ops console, from the main menu, in the networking section, we click tenant networks, and we have no segmentation IDs in there at the moment. Nothing to display, so I click add segmentation ID range, and I'm going to add the ID range 241 to 249 and click add. Now we would need to speak with the network administrators to find out these VLAN IDs before we do this, but I've already got that information. So we'll just wait while those segmentation IDs are created. And there they are. We've got 9 total segmentation IDs. Now I'm going to go across to the Horizon portal and go to the admin section and networks. And there's the external network we created a moment ago. What we need to do now is to go into that external network and create a subnet. And this is a subnet from which IP addresses are going to be allocated. And let's call the subnet jump server. And the network address 192.168.50.0/24. It's going to be IPv4, and we can leave the gateway blank and disable gateway unchecked, and click next. And we want to have DHCP enabled, and we need to specify allocation pools. These are a range of IP addresses from which we're going to allocate IPs to tenants. This is 192.168.50.50, comma 192.168.50.150. Make sure we have the comma in there, that's most important. And we can leave the DNS name servers and the host routes blank, and I click create. And from the network details page, we can see that this subnet has been created. And there's its ID, and there's the start and end of the IP allocation pool. So now we've created our external network and a subnet on that external network. Next thing we're going to do is to create some VM instances in the Horizon portal. So what we're going to do is to assume that we're just a cloud user, first of all. So we're already logged into the Horizon portal as an administrator. So let's look at the project section and select Compute Overview. And we should see that we have no instances running at this time, as I expected it. So in order to be able to create an instance, a VM instance, we're going to need an image from which to boot that VM instance. So I click on Images, and I do not have any images, so I'm going to create one, Create Image. And here we have the Create Image wizard. It's going to be called My Image. And the image source is going to be image file. Now I click Choose File. And I'm expecting to find an Ubuntu image, and there it is, Ubuntu 12.04. I'll open that. The format is VMDK. The OS is Linux, Ubuntu Linux. I can leave the rest of the fields blank, except I am going to make this public, so multiple tenants could use this, and create image. It's going to take a few moments to create that, so I'm going to pause and we'll see you shortly. And there we are, the image has been created and it's in the saving state, so that'll take a few more moments, so we can let that carry on in the background. So in preparation for creating some VM instances, we're going to create some security groups, some key pairs, and some floating IPs. So a security group is a set of security rules, and these are applied to all VM instances through IP filter rules, and that's implemented on the KVM compute nodes that host the VM instances. And these rules define networking access to the instance. So there is a default security group, and that applies to all new instances that are created, but that denies all incoming traffic to the instance and allows only outgoing traffic. So administrators and tenants, users themselves, can create new security groups, or they could edit the default security group of their project to add new rule sets. So we're logged in as an admin, and we're associated with the demo tenant. The fact that we are an administrator means we get the project section and the admin section. So I'm going to look under project and compute which we were there already, access and security. And the security groups tab is selected, and we can see that we've got the default security group. I'm going to create another security group, and I'm going to call it sec group 1, and its description is going to be enable SSH and ping. So we create that group. There's the group, and we need to manage the rules. And we can see we've got egress rules. What we need to do is to add some ingress, some incoming rules. So I'll add my first rule, and this is going to be allowing all ICMP traffic inbound from anywhere. Okay, we'd be very cautious about doing this in a production environment, but here I'm happy that all ping traffic from all nodes is going to be allowed into my VMs that's going to be associated with this security group. Let's add a second rule, and this is going to be a custom TCP rule on port 22. This is to allow SSH. So there we have it. We've got two new rules to allow ping traffic and to allow SSH in and to allow SSH access to my VM. Back to the access and security main page. Now we are going to create a key pair. If we want to be able to log into our VMs without providing a password, we need a key pair. So I will click Create Key Pair, and let's call it Key Pair 1. I shall use a Key Pair 1 and create the key pair. And you can see it's downloaded this keypair.pem file. So that's in my downloads folder. I may need to use that later on. So if we're going to want to use PuTTY to connect to a VM instance, we've got to enable the key pair to be used with PuTTY. So it needs to be converted from a .pem to a .ppk file. So we've got the PuTTygen. Let me just go onto the desktop here. The PuTTygen utility is going to do that for me. So I'm going to click Load. And in my Downloads folder, I should see that PEM file. It is a PEM, so I'm going to have to say All Files. And it was that one there that I created today. And it's imported that key. Click OK. And now I'm going to save private key. And I'm going to save it without a passphrase. Again, in real life, you might want to have a passphrase on it. And let's save it as key pair 1. And that's it done. Now we can close PuTTygen. So in my downloads folder, I should have keypair1.ppk. Let's just check that I just created. And there it is there. That's good. Now let's get back to the Horizon portal. Back to access and security. And now we're going to create floating IPs. So we have none at the moment. Floating IPs can be allocated to VM instances, and that allows access from the external network into the VM instance. So let's allocate IP to project. Make sure that the external pool is selected as it is, and allocate IP. And now we see floating IP 192.168.50.50. Now if you think back to 10 and 15 minutes ago, we created an external network and an external subnet, and we specified an allocation pool. 192.168.50.50 is the first IP address from that pool in that external subnet. So we're going to be able to allocate that floating IP to a VM instance later on. So now let's create and connect a private network using a virtual router to connect to the external network. So now we need to be in the project network section, and we have no private networks now. Let's click create network, and we're going to call this network internal, and so this is going to be a network specifically for the VM instances to connect to. It's an internal private network. So create subnet is going to be checked. The subnet name is internal, and its network address is going to be 10.0.0.0/24. IPv4, we don't need gateway IP. Let's click next. We will have DHCP enabled, and let's use allocation pools 10.0.0.50, 10.0.0.150, and we click create. So it's created our internal network. Now let's look at the network topology, and we can see we've got the external network that was created by the administrator. Tenants cannot create that external network. That's the admins that do that. And then we've got the internal network that's created by the demo tenant with its IP allocation range. So now we've got to connect the internal network to the external network, and we do that using a router. At the moment we have no router, so let's create one. Create router, we'll call it connecting for want of a better name, and we create it. Now at the moment we've got, back to network topology, we've got a router, but it's not connected to anything. So first thing we need to do is to set its gateway. So we just click set gateway, and then select the external network we want to connect it to, and that's the external, and click set gateway. Now let's go back to network topology, and we can see that the router is connected to the external network. We now need, of course, to connect it to the internal network. So what we're going to have to do there is let's select the router, and we're going to add an interface to the router. And there we need to select the internal network, and then click add interface. So this router now has two interfaces, one connected to the external network and a second one connected to the internal. Back on network topology, we can see that our router is nicely connected to both networks. So now we've got our security groups, our key pair, our floating IP, our network, and our router. Let's create our first VM instance. So in the project section, we click compute instances and launch instance. And its name is going to be instance 1. And it's going to be flavor m1.small, We're going to just create one instance, and the boot source is going to be boot from image. And this is the image we created earlier on, so we select that. Now I'm not going to click launch. If I do that, I'm going to have a challenge. What I need to do next is click access and security. Key pair 1 is selected. I need to select my sec group 1. I can leave the default enabled if I wish, but I prefer not to do that. I just want the sec group 1. Now I need to select my networking. And I've got only one available network and it's already been selected for me. So I click launch. And the instances screen shows me that the VM instance is in build state. It will take a few moments to come up completely and become active. So we'll pause and come back in a few moments. And here we are back at the instances screen. After about a minute, the instance 1 can be seen to be in running state and active. So all is looking good. So now what we will do is to associate a floating IP address with this VM instance. And this floating IP is going to allow us to connect to the VM instance from the outside world. So this is the floating IP that's available for us. We select that, click associate, and we'll see in a moment that the private IP 10.0.0.56 has been joined by this public floating IP 192.168.50.50. So I'm now just going to make sure I can connect to that IP. I'll just do a quick ping. 192.168.50.50. Looking good. So clearly we have connectivity from the outside network onto that VM. So we were able to ping to the VM because we set that new security group, set group 1, and we allowed all inbound ICMP traffic. Now I'm going to use PuTTY and see if we can connect via SSH to port 22. And I'm going to log in. Clearly SSH access works also. So now let's take a look at the sort of management tasks we can perform on this VM. From this list we can see associate floating IP, which is what we've just done. We can dissociate a floating IP, edit the instance, edit security groups, look at the console for the instance, logs, pause it, suspend it, resize it. Resize means change the number of virtual CPUs, etc. We can soft or hard reboot it, we can shut it off, we can rebuild it, and we can terminate it. So I'm just going to click on the name of the instance, and we'll go and take a look at the detail page for that particular instance, and we'll see it's got an ID here. And just as a matter of interest, let's just go take a look inside of vCenter. Just make a mental note of the last few digits of that ID there, 08613. And let's take a look in vCenter, and we should see a VM created on our target cluster with that ID, and there it is, BA086F3, BA086F3. So we've seen that CloudSystem Foundation has just created an instance that has been spun up on the CS target cluster of CloudSystem, and there it is inside of vCenter. So back over on the instance detail page, we can see the flavor, how much RAM it's got, how many virtual CPUs. We can see both its internal private IP address and its floating IP. We can see the security group set group 1 with the rules that we just applied. We don't have any attached volumes at the moment. So the next thing we're going to do is to create and attach a Cinder block storage volume to a VM. So I'm going to click on volumes, and I have no volumes at the moment, so I click create volume. Let's call it volume 1. And a quick description. And the type is going to be cloud system. I'm going to create a 5 GB volume and leave it in any availability zone and click create volume. And there is my first volume. Now what I'm going to do is to go to the drop-down menu and edit attachments. And I'm going to select my instance 1, and I'm going to attach volume. And it's attaching. And there it is, attached to my instance 1. So when I go back to instances and select instance 1 and scroll to the bottom, I can see I've got my volume attached on /dev/SDB. So that's almost like a virtual USB hard drive that I've just connected to my instance 1. I could go in and format it and create a file system and mount that file system on my VM. But that's really an operating system management issue rather than a cloud system issue, so we'll leave that for now. And really that concludes this demo of Cloud System Foundation. So we saw how to monitor activity with the Cloud System Operations Console. We saw the appliance clustering within Foundation. We looked at the Horizon portal. We created an external network. We created some segmentation IDs and subnets, so VM instances could get IP addresses. We then created, we actually loaded an image into Cloud System Foundation that we could boot our VM from. We created security groups, key pairs, and floating IPs. We then created and connected a private network using a virtual router. We connected that to the external network through that router. We then created a VM instance. And then when we demonstrated that we could connect that instance from the outside network, we created and attached a similar volume to that VM. So in the next video, we're going to be looking at Cloud System Enterprise. So we'll see you then.